So welcome everyone to tonight's talk on this July 7th, 3 days after what some corners of the world are calling Interdependence Day. May it be so, and may that vision and that reality be the font of our celebration. As it happens, there is a formally designated Interdependence Day, an event launched in response to 9/11/01, 20 years ago. Out of that violent and visceral expression of globalization emerged an effort to recognize our deep interconnectedness. All persons, all beings, all around the globe. Alongside the myriad ways we help and harm one another, COVID has made it still more clear. We are inextricably interdependent. Well-being for each of us depends on the well-being of all. And so also with suffering. We are thoroughly, unconditionally interconnected. Zen goes a step beyond this, a leap, really. You're not only connected to each and every aspect of this wide, wide world. This wide world is your whole body. Wherever you turn, your own true face. Each bit is all of it. Not a speck outside, nothing excluded, no remainder. All. One, all. Henry presented this vividly in his talk last week on Goethe's One Finger. His compelling teaching made me recall a talk some years ago by Ryon Roshi at a North American Sambo Zen retreat in Canada. Speaking about Mu as the primary breakthrough koan, Roshi said there are a couple of others that could be included in that category. Koans with the capacity to knock down the scaffolding, demolish the house of concepts and assumptions, incinerate the delusion of separation. Goethe's One Finger is one of them. But, Roshi said, it would be strange if in zendos all around the world, people were sitting in zazen, staring at a finger. That's how he practiced with this koan. Just looking into it. What really is this one finger? What do you see? And what happens to you when you see it? Whenever he was asked, whatever he was asked, Master Goethe simply held up one finger. We know the questions like the back of our hand. Who am I? What is the point of this life? What is it to be truly human? Or in terms drawn from this practice, what is the way? What is Buddha? Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? Or maybe even more distilled, what is the teaching of the whole lifetime of Shakyamuni? A monk puts that question to Unman. What is the sum total of Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching? What did the whole of his awakening life convey? Unman answers, one preaching in accordance. Sometimes translated, preaching facing oneness. One fact. Earlier this week, a student raised this question and offered a response. She stood, computer in hand, walking through from one room to the next. May I show? I saw the doorway, the wooden ceiling beams, then the scan to a wall-side altar, a long burning candle, a few artifacts. Slowly, the eye of the camera turned. I knew the student's sister had recently received a diagnosis and made the turn into illness. How is she? Are you home? There. The camera moved from the altar, a flame of perpetual love, to the body on a bed near to the floor. Gray, still soft with beauty, surrounded by flowers all around. Preaching facing oneness. One preaching in accordance. Early on in this practice, I heard about a teaching that was commonly addressed to monks on the first night of the 3-month practice period known as Ango. Sit with the mind of one facing death. This is a helpful practice instruction. Life is transient, utterly fleeting. Death will come at any moment. Taste this moment. But what about that leap? What if this very moment is all of it coming up right now? Gone, but here. Here, but gone. Life, death, without the slightest gap. This, now. What about uncompromising oneness? What about empty, infinite freedom and boundless compassion? Preaching, facing oneness. One preaching in accordance. So tonight, as a way of exploring this indivisibly dynamic world of life, death, I'd like to look into a koan called Tozan and the Memorial Service. This is case 49 in the Book of Equanimity, or Shoyoroku. And I'm just going to take up the beginning of the case tonight, maybe continue at another time. But I'll read the case. Here it is. When Tozan held a memorial service for Ungon before his portrait, he told the episode related to the portrait. Then a monk asked, when Ungon said, just this, what did he mean? Tozan said, at that time, I almost misunderstood my master's intention. The monk said, I wonder whether or not Ungon really knew that it is. Tozan said, if he did not know that it is, how could he speak like that? If he knew that it is, how did he dare speak like that? This case opens with the scene of a memorial service, an annual commemoration that Tozan held for his deceased master, Ungon. Another translation reads, as Tozan was presenting offerings before the image of Ungon, he retold the story from before about depicting the reality. Master Bansho, who added an introduction and commentary to each of the cases in the Book of Equanimity, inserts this comment about the portrait. Who says it's artificial? This picture. What artifice? What is being depicted? What if there's only one? This statue of Kannon stands in commemoration of Yamada Koen Roshi. Where is Koen Roshi? What is his true face? As to retelling the story about the image, Bansho adds, each time you bring it up, it's new. What artifice? Totally new. That portrait is the reality. Even to say exuding is not close enough. each time completely new. This is about now. A few weeks ago, a student who is earnestly practicing with Mu went for a walk. The walk was part of her normal schedule and the path familiar. But something unfamiliar happened. At one point, a rather large butterfly flew over her shoulder, quite near. A delight, a moment of wonder. Then came the sudden insight. The butterfly, a plant in the distance, the grass, stones, path, trees, sky. One reality. She used the word same. Some days later, walking that path, she came to the spot where this experience happened, remembering it vividly. And then came this. The memory is no different from this moment. Now. Hearing this brought to mind a verse by the Zen monk and poet Ikkyu. You can find this in Zen, the Authentic Gate. Ikkyu writes, "What is mind? The sound of the wind in the pine tree, in the brush painting." The sound of the wind in the pine tree, in the brush painting. At the memorial service, surrounded by his monks, Tozan recounts a story about the image of his master. One day, years earlier, when he was leaving his master, Tozan asked Ungon, "After your passing, if I am asked by someone whether I have your portrait, what should I answer?" Your image, who you really are, your Dharma. Do I have it? How shall I convey it? Ungon remained silent for a while. And then said, just this. We could stop here. The story includes one more line. Ungon's last words to his student as Tozan prepares to leave on pilgrimage, leaving for the last time. When Tozan is about to go, Ungon calls him, "Dear Kai." It's a personal address, intimate, direct. And then Ungon's charge. If you want to attain this great matter, go straight to it and be utmost precise. How will you realize the great matter, the fact of who you are, the resolution of the matter of life and death? Go straight to it and be utmost precise. We might keep in mind the koan Henry took up at our last retreat on that first day. How will you walk straight on a narrow mountain path with 99 curves? Straight into the curve, Henry said. Here, now, exactly this. Most of you know that Tozan became a great master, co-founder of the Soto school. He pursued long training as a monk, going around and practicing with key masters of the time, most notably Nansen, Isan, and Ungan or Yunyan, his last teacher, from whom he received Dharma transmission. In all of this story, national teacher Echu also figures in. Echu, famous for his seamless tombstone. Ungan was born 5 years after national teacher Echu died. So there's this continuity, this teaching coming down. Tozan had deep experiences along the way, but he still had doubt. He wasn't satisfied. Even after the great matter is put to rest for him, he keeps on earnestly practicing. So for now, I'd just like to look at the early part of his sojourn, these remarkable masters. When he was young, just starting out, Tozan read the Heart Sutra. There's a rich record of this. He came to the words, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. And he asked his teacher, I have eyes, ears, a nose, and so on. Why does the sutra say none? The teacher, it is said, was dumbstruck by the insight of young Tozan's question. None, none, none. Then what is this? So this teacher, recognizing his own limitations, sends Tozan on to train. Tozan goes to Nansen, great teacher of Joshu. And he arrives just as the Sangha is preparing a feast in honor of Nansen's late master, Baso. Nansen asks the monks, tomorrow we will have Baso's feast, but Baso, will Baso come or not? We're having this feast, this commemoration. Will he come or not? The monks are silent. Tozan steps forward and says, if he has a companion, he'll come. That response gets parsed, unpacked in different ways. Students sometimes speak of Mu as a companion. This true self, always there, so near. Are there two? Nansen takes note of Tozan's promise and sends him on to Isan, another great master. Tozan meets Isan, and they have a telling exchange, one that redounds to the opening scene of this Book of Equanimity case. The memorial, the episode about the portrait, and the question, was Ungon there? Is he here? Where is his Dharma? One day, Tozan asks, I've heard that national teacher Echu taught that inanimate beings expound Dharma. I don't understand this clearly. Isan asks him to repeat the teaching. So Tozan relays this story, which he knows by heart. A monk asked the national teacher Echu, what is the mind of the ancient Buddhas? The national teacher said, a wall tile. The monk said, a wall tile? Isn't a wall tile inanimate? The national teacher said, yes. The monk asked, and it can expound the Dharma? The national teacher said, it expounds it brilliantly, without end. The monk said, why can't I hear it? The dialogue goes on. And finally, Echu quotes a line from the Flower Garland Sutra. The chiliocosm, this multiverse, sentient beings, and the three realms all expound the Dharma. They all proclaim it. Everything expounding. Each thing is it. One preaching facing oneness. Tozan finishes the story and Isan says, I have this teaching, but it's rare to meet a person who understands it. Tozan says, I'm not clear about it. I ask for your instruction. Isan lifts up his whisk and says, do you understand? Like this cup proclaiming the Dharma? Do you hear? Do you see it? Tozan says, I don't understand. Please explain it to me, Master. And then Isan has this great line. The mouth that my parents gave to the world is utterly unable to explain this to you. So Tozan asks, is there anyone who can explain it? And Isan sends him to Ungon. With a push, quite a push, a challenge. Perhaps more later. Tozan goes directly. He tells Ungon the story about the teaching and asks, who can hear inanimate things expound the Dharma? Can you hear? Ungon cites another sutra. The lakes and rivers, the birds, the forests, they all chant Buddha. They all chant Dharma. Hearing this, hearing it for the first time, Tozan has an experience, a glimpse. He writes, how marvelous, how marvelous. Inanimate things proclaiming the Dharma is inconceivable. It can't be known if the ears try to hear it. But when the eyes hear it, there is direct understanding. When the eyes hear it, this eye, this eye, this eye. EQ's verse, again, comes into focus. What is mind? The sound of the wind in the pine tree, in the brush painting. Or maybe a picture on the altar. Faces on a screen. The body of a beloved sibling in a bed of flowers. Exuding the Dharma. Exuding is not even close enough. The last time I saw Ryan Roshi, he spoke about his practice. Sometimes, he said, sometimes I'm sitting with Mu. Sometimes just sitting. And sometimes I'm seeing the world after my death. What is he seeing? What is he hearing? EQ has a related couplet. Elaine McGinnis Roshi cites it in response to the koan, "What is the sound of one hand?" The wall tile is preaching. What is the sound of one hand? Realizing this sound, she quotes the phrase, "Where there is nothing, the limitless storehouse." Then she adds, "The sound of one hand is our original face." Wall tile, portrait, the limitless storehouse. As if in response, EQ writes, Mr. Original Face cuts a fancy figure. One look, and it's love at first sight. Yamada Konroshi comments, just once, wouldn't you like to fall in love like this? Mr. Original Face. We might say Ms. or Mix, whatever name you put there. Whole, complete and inexhaustibly available. Love from the beginningless beginning. Love at first sight. Now. Now. Thank you for listening. And thank you so much for this shared practice.